Hey guys, Chris from Hockey Tutorial here. Today we're at Peterborough Ice Rink. We've just finished doing a bit of training and some scrimmages. My equipment is completely soaked, so I thought this would be the perfect time to try out the Rocket Sports Equipment Dryer. What this is, it's a multi-purpose sports equipment drying machine that you can use to dry up your hockey kit. So I thought this would be the perfect chance to test it out because my kit's soaked. So I'm going to take this home, set it up. I'll show you what it looks like while I'm setting it up, and also I'll let you know how long it takes to get your equipment from soaking wet to completely dry. So one of the main reasons that hockey players are going to love this piece of equipment here is because the first point is that it keeps your kit smelling and feeling like new. It fights odour and bacteria and prevents it by drying the kit out before that stuff has a time to set in. It's incredibly portable. As you can see, the entire unit fits inside this box over here, and it has a carry bag inside this box which is actually smaller than the box itself. It's also incredibly easy to set up and operate, which are sort of aspects that mean that if you're going to be going away to a game, if you're going to be playing away from your normal ice rink, or even if you're playing at your normal ice rink, you can take this with you, set it up, use it quickly, dry your kit out for the next day, meaning that you always get that nice fresh feeling. I know a lot of hockey players say that they don't mind playing with wet kit, but me personally and all of the guys that I know cannot stand using wet, soggy kit. So this is the perfect thing to have with you in your next to your kit bag, which means that you'll be able to play with dry equipment every time. So one of the important points is this thing states that it will dry your kit out in roughly about 60 minutes, which is quite a short time considering that you normally have to leave your kit out for a few days before it dries. That's nice to hear. Of course, we're going to test that in the video that I'm going to be shooting today. And most importantly, I'd like to mention that if you guys play in a big team, this is something that you could invest in with your team. Let's say there's 30 or 25 to 30 of you guys, you could maybe buy a few of these units rather than every single person owning a unit. Because it only takes roughly about 60 minutes to dry up your kit, you could share this between you and your team. So this is definitely a must-have for the next season. So in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is open up the box, remove all the packaging from all of the bits that are inside the box, lay it out on the ground so you can see exactly what's inside there and what you get when you buy one of these rocket dryers. So what you can see here is everything that you get inside the box. You can see the box on the top right hand side of the camera screen over there. The left hand object, the big black bag-like looking thing, is the tent that goes over the top of all of this gear that you can see laid out here, and also of course on top of my hockey equipment, which will be set up inside that bag that you can see just over there. You can see that it has these leg-like things just over here. I'm guessing those are going to be to hold it up, and I'm guessing these two things are going to be to sort of sit on top of the legs, and that's where you're going to sort of attach your gear onto with the hooks and pegs that come inside, which you can see just in front of me over here. Got is that massive weird alien-like looking thing on the right hand side there is actually going to be the device that pumps the air in a circular motion into the tent to dry your equipment, and the thing next to it on the left hand side is going to be the sort of hook or pegs that all of your gear will be attached onto. And the little black bag you can see above there folded neatly is going to be the carry case that you get for all of this stuff. As I said, the carry case is roughly about the same size as the box, really small and light, so you can carry it with you to tournaments, to games, to training, which means that you can always have dry equipment if you're going to be on the ice the next day, so it's pretty good. So I've got my gear set up over here. It's still soaking wet from playing, so I'm going to get it set up and see how long it takes to dry it using the new rocket dryer. One thing I will mention is the bottom of this heat unit over here. This is the thing that pumps the hot air through the tent to dry your gear. It's pretty simple, as I said earlier on, to set up, and also you can't even put these in the wrong way because you might be able to see that they're in a sort of a half circle shape, which corresponds to the sections that they need to go into, so you can't even put them in the wrong way. There's only one way that they'll fit in, and that's the right way, so it is really easy to set this thing up. Same goes again for these things over here. What this bottom plastic bit over here that you can see is, it's a shield that prevents any water, because obviously this is going to be an electric heating unit. This shield sits over the top and prevents any water or moisture from your gear dripping down and getting into this thing to stop it from working, so that's pretty cool. So even if your kit is pretty wet, you'll still be able to use this without any fear of damaging it or getting it wet. And this is that peg thing that I was saying that will support all of your equipment. So pretty self-explanatory. This sits on the top. Your gear gets hooked onto these little metal hooks. Stays on like that. In terms of the initial setup, that's it. So taking a look at the main body of this heater, you can see it has these three legs, and the actual body of it that produces the heat in the circular motion to dry your gear out is this thing over here. So first thing that you notice is in the middle it has a timer that allows you to set the sort of time or duration that you want your equipment to be drying for.
So it has a mode where you can just have it constantly on, or you can set it for 30 minutes all the way up to 180 minutes in a 30-minute interval. So you can go 30, 60, 90, 120. So it's quite handy. It's sort of custom depending on how big your equipment is, how much equipment is in there, and of course how wet the equipment is and how long it will need to dry. So that's really, really useful to see. One thing I will mention is if you're in the UK, bear in mind that you are going to need an adapter for this thing. I'm not sure if they're going to come provided in the box, but as always I'll put a link in the video description down below to where you guys can go and pick this up. But keep in mind, it is a 2-pin, so you might need to have an adapter handy. So what I'll be doing over here is what I'm going to call the official tissue test. I've got a dry piece of tissue over here. What I'll be doing is pressing it up against my elbow pads that you can see over here to see or to give you an idea of how much moisture is inside there. I'll do the exact same thing again after I've had my equipment go through the Rocket Sports Dryer to see exactly how much moisture it'll remove from my gear, how quickly it'll dry it, obviously within the space of about an hour. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to press it up against the sides there nice and good to get an idea of how much moisture is inside there. Hopefully you can see that from the video there's quite a lot of moisture inside there. The tissue's almost gone see-through. So this just gives us a good idea that there's quite a lot of moisture inside these pads over here. So now that's pretty much all of the gear that I want to have dried set up on the Rocket Dryer. You can see that surprisingly the gear is pretty big, but it fits. You might have to sort of rearrange stuff to just get it to fit a bit better so you can have the bag go over the top of it and make sure it's all nice and neat inside there. And what I'll probably do is kind of reorganize this thing to try and make sure that it's balanced. There's not too much weight on one side, but that's pretty much all you need to keep an eye out on. A quick side note, taking a look at the bag or the tent itself, you can see that it has these holes or perforations at the top. That's to release any of the excess heat that's going to be working its way through this thing. It's why this Rocket Dryer system works so much better than, I know a lot of people like to stuff their gear into the airing cupboard, or if you have a heater you put it on top of that with a towel over the top to try and get it to dry out a bit quicker. But because there's no circulation of the air inside the actual area that you've got the equipment put in when it's nice and warm, it still builds up that moisture and bacteria. But because this thing has a good circulation of air and heat inside it, and of course because the heat is spiraling up through the equipment in a circular motion and then out through these vents at the top, that's the reason that this thing's so effective at drying your equipment in such a short time. And another point is, you might notice that the length of the cord that you get with this thing is pretty limited. It's probably about 1 meter long. So if you're going to be taking this thing away with you to hotels, to different ice rinks and different people's houses, if you're playing in hockey tournaments and leagues, you're probably going to need to take an extension cable with you just to make sure that you get the reach that you need. So keep that in mind. So you might be able to hear this thing churning away inside there. I've got it turned on. So what we're going to do is leave my equipment in there for roughly about an hour. I'll see how much it dries out after an hour, but I'm probably guessing I'll need to leave it in there for about an hour and 30 minutes because it is pretty wet. But we'll see how it goes, how long it takes it to dry out, and we'll come back to it. So you can see the time right now is 2:06, so I will check back with you guys at roughly 3:06, give it about an hour or so, see how it goes. It's 3:09, so it's been just over an hour. The Rocket Dryer is still going in the background, you might be able to hear it churning away. So let's see how the equipment's dried out. One thing I will say is that a lot of concerns is if your equipment is a bit moist and you get that damp, moist smell, a lot of players might be scared that because obviously I'm doing this in my living room, that smell is just going to flood the entire house. But it's safe to say that I can't smell anything bad. My equipment doesn't exactly smell fresh. It's quite old, especially the shoulder pads and shorts. But there's no sort of bad odours in the air. I'll just double check with my girlfriend who's in the kitchen right now. Babe, can you smell anything funny inside the house because I've had this dryer on drying my hockey gear? Does it smell fine?
Yeah, it smells alright.
Smells alright? There you go, confirmation from the girl herself. They're the ones that normally complain if there's a bad smell in the air, so I can definitely confirm that you don't get any bad smells building up inside the room that you're going to be using this dryer to dry your equipment in. The second you open that bag, you get hit by the warm air, so just be careful not to burn yourselves inside here. The bits that you want to watch is going to be those metal S-hooks that I showed you earlier on that we use to hang up the equipment. And if you've got your helmet in here and you use a cage like me because you're a bit scared of taking a puck to the face or a stick to the face, then just be cautious because the grill of the cage might be a little bit warm. But besides that, the gear is incredibly dry. It's really, really surprising. My socks are nice and dry, which were absolutely soaked before I put them in. My shoulder pads are nice and dry, giving those a quick squeeze. My shin and knee pads as well, those are nice and dry. But one of the ones that I wanted to take a look at was going to be my gloves. So if you go ahead and drop that down. My gloves were absolutely soaked on the inside, so I want to see how those have sort of dried off. Gloves are really, really dry. Surprising, they were very wet when I put them in here, so that's nice to know. But one point that is still a little bit moist is going to be just the tips of the gloves over here. As I said, this rocket dryer was on for a couple minutes over an hour. If I was to crank this thing up to an hour and a half, so leave my gear in there for a bit longer, then the gloves would be completely dry as well, so I wouldn't have to worry about those fingertips. So I definitely give these rocket dryers a thumbs up, and it's going to be a must-have for any team. You don't have to have one individually, like I said earlier on in the video. It's something that you could probably look at purchasing maybe 3 or 4 of them and sharing them between your teammates, because these things are fantastic. Of course, this is going to be the tissue test after the rocket dryer's done its work. I've got my tissue over here for the official test. Same again, press it against the sides there. Nice and good. Take that away and you can see that literally not a drop of moisture left on that. Get rid of the one on the back, you can see that it's completely dry. So that's just over an hour inside the rocket dryer, and it's taken my equipment from completely soaking to completely dry. What more could you ask for? Definite must have. As always guys, thanks for watching the video. Of course, if you want to be able to pick up one of these rocket dryers, there'll be a link down below in the video description to where you guys can do that, so be sure to check that out. One of the other things that I wanted to mention, that although this is something that's for ice hockey and hockey, it's not something that has to be specifically used for those sports. Any recreational sports that involve your equipment getting wet, you can use this thing to dry them off, so it's pretty handy. Thanks for watching guys. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to check out hockeytutorial.com, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get updates of when we release new videos. Thanks again guys, and take care till next time.